Margaret returned from Vermont to find the study door standing open. A chill ran through her before she even looked inside. Inside, the shelves were bare. 42 years of Charles's first editions, the books he'd collected since before their marriage, gone as if they'd never existed.
His books. The Hemingway he found in Paris. The Steinbeck he carried home from California. All gone.
Her daughter-in-law, Michelle, stood in the hallway, phone in hand, watching without a trace of remorse.
I donated them. They were just dusty old books taking up space. Goodwill picked them up yesterday.
Those were first editions, signed. Charles built that collection his whole life. You had no right.
You weren't here. I was helping. I put 4 boxes out. They took them to the Goodwill over on Pine Street.
4 boxes. I have to find them before they're scattered or sold. I won't let his legacy disappear in some thrift shop.
She didn't waste another word on Michelle. Keys in hand, she walked out and got into the car. Pine Street, Goodwill. She'd be there in 15 minutes. Every book she could save was one less piece of Charles lost forever. She pulled into the parking lot and hurried inside. Row after row of used books. None were his.
Excuse me, did anyone drop off 4 boxes of old books yesterday? Leather-bound? Some with handwritten notes.
The clerk shook her head. At 2 more stores, the same answer. At the 3rd Goodwill, she saw a man holding a book she knew. Charles's Hemingway. Mr. Gregory, a rare book dealer, turned at her approach.
That book was my husband's. It's signed. There's a dedication to his father on the flyleaf.
I paid $4 for it. If it's yours, I want to help. 3 boxes came in yesterday. They might still be unsorted in the back.
Those boxes have my address. They're mine.
Then let's talk to the manager. We have some books to rescue. Gregory led her to the back office, where a manager listened to their hurried explanation. He added that Charles and he had known each other from estate auctions. Charles was a gentleman and a true collector. Let us see those unsorted boxes, please. The manager nodded and led them into a cluttered stockroom. There, 3 cardboard boxes sat against a wall, one labeled, Books. Margaret knelt and opened the first box. The familiar scent of aged paper and leather rose up. Her hands trembled. This is a first edition of The Grapes of Wrath. It's inscribed to Charles, personally, from Steinbeck himself.
I remember the day he bought this. He was so proud. It's like finding a piece of him again.
They sorted through the boxes, pulling out 31 first editions, 11 of them signed. Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Faulkner, all there. The manager, seeing Margaret's tears, agreed to release the books at cost, a goodwill gesture for a few dollars per box. At the register, Margaret handed over a $20 bill. Not even a fraction of what those books were truly worth. Outside, they loaded the boxes into the trunk. The sun hung low, golden over the parking lot. All was safe, yet the real reckoning had not begun. When Gregory arrived at her house behind her, he was already on the phone. He had called a friend at the Boston auction house to come give a formal appraisal the next morning. Charles once saved my shop. A flood ruined my inventory, and he lent me a first edition Austin. No questions asked. I never forgot. The appraiser came early. Margaret watched him examine each book with careful hands. When he finished, he removed his glasses and gave the total, $312,000.
$312,000. And she gave them away like trash.
Later, alone, she unpacked each box with slow reverence. In a small volume of Millet's poems, she found a handwritten inscription, "For my Margaret, who makes every verse true, Charles."
He gave me this on our 20th anniversary. I had forgotten it was here.
By nightfall, the shelves were filled again. The leather spines caught the lamplight. But Margaret could not rest. She picked up the phone and called Elizabeth, her attorney of 20 years.
Elizabeth, my daughter-in-law, gave away Charles's entire library. I've recovered the books, but I want to sue. They need to understand what they nearly destroyed.
The next morning, Margaret sat in Elizabeth's office, a folder of appraisals and photographs on the table between them.
Margaret, this is an unusual case. Small claims court could work. We can sue for the buyback cost plus Gregory's finder's fee.
I don't want the whole value, just the $1,200. And an apology they can't ignore.
The court can't order an apology, but the judgment will send a clear message that this was wrong.
Elizabeth drafted a simple complaint: conversion and trespass to chattels. The books had been recovered, but the unauthorized taking was the core damage. Margaret signed the paper without hesitation. An assistant filed it at the courthouse that afternoon. The summons was mailed to Stephen and Michelle's address. Margaret felt no satisfaction, only a grim necessity.
Stephen will be caught in the middle, but he has to see what she did.
She returned to the study that evening. The books sat safe on their shelves, but the silence was heavy. The battle was just beginning, but the collection was whole. All that remained was the reckoning. In the quiet of the study, Margaret took out her best stationery. She wrote to Stephen, explaining everything. Your wife gave away your father's entire collection. Its appraised value is over $300,000. She sealed the envelope with his name on it and mailed it. 2 days later, Stephen found the letter in the mailbox. He sat at his kitchen table, reading.
$300,000. Mom sued us. This is a nightmare.
Michelle came in and saw his face. She snatched the letter.
She's lying. Old books? Worth nothing. This is just to embarrass us.
Stephen and Michelle argued. His voice rose, but hers was louder. Later, Stephen called Margaret. He pleaded with her to drop the suit.
I will not drop it. You need to understand what she nearly cost this family.
Before Stephen could reply, Michelle grabbed the phone from his hand.
You stubborn old woman. Those books were worthless. You just want to destroy my marriage.
This isn't about you, Michelle. It's about what you did.
I hope you die alone in that dusty mausoleum.
The line clicked dead. Margaret set the receiver down, her hands trembling.
She meant every word, but I will not let cruelty win.
She called Gregory. He listened without interruption to the raw account. I'll testify. For Charles and for you. No one should ever treat his legacy like garbage. Elizabeth added Gregory to the witness list and filed it with the court. The date was set. That night, Margaret sat in the restored study, drawing strength from the silent ranks of books. The next morning, Margaret arrived at Elizabeth's office with Gregory. A final review before the hearing.
The court will want proof of value. Gregory's testimony is essential, but expect Michelle to attack your motives personally.
I've endured her cruelty already. Nothing she says now can change the truth.
Gregory slid the formal appraisal across the desk, its seal unbroken. $312,000, signed and sealed. Charles would be proud. We're standing up. Margaret picked it up, her hand steady. The paper felt heavier than it should. That evening, she stood alone in the study, the shelves of recovered books glowing in the lamplight behind her.
Charles, they tried to throw away your life's collection, but I won't let them devalue you again. Tomorrow, I'll prove it in court. They'll learn what these books truly mean.
She switched off the lamp. In the sudden darkness, the spines seemed to hum with a century of stories, waiting. The morning of the hearing, Margaret walked into the courtroom with Elizabeth, Gregory close behind. Stephen and Michelle sat at the opposite table. Margaret took the stand first. Her voice did not waver.
My daughter-in-law cleared my late husband's library without permission. She gave away irreplaceable signed first editions. I want the recovery costs.
Gregory then took the stand, holding the appraisal as if it were a sacred text. I am a rare book dealer. I authenticated 31 first editions from those boxes. Their total value is $312,000. When Michelle rose to speak, she was all sharp angles and false innocence.
They were just old books. I helped declutter. She's just bitter that her son chose me over her.
Mrs. Bennett, you admitted you donated property that wasn't yours. The court fines for the plaintiff. Pay the $1,400.
Stephen tried to rise to say something, but the gavel fell again. Margaret would not look at him. Outside, The cold air hit her. The victory was hers, but it tasted like ashes. The library was whole. The family was not. A week later, an envelope arrived in the mail. Inside, a check for the full amount and a note in Stephen's handwriting. "I am sorry, Stephen."
2 words. Not enough, but something.
She used the money to buy a pair of brass reading lamps and a glass display case for the most valuable editions. The Hemingway and Steinbeck went inside, behind glass, where light could touch them, but careless hands could not.
At least now they're safe. But safety isn't ownership. Anyone could come in again.
She packed a carton with the duplicate first editions, the ones Charles had bought as spares, and drove to the university. Outside the old library, ivy clung to stone. Inside, the librarian welcomed her like an old friend.
Mrs. Bennet, this is a gift to the whole department. We'll put a plate in each one, in memory of Charles Reeves.
Days later, the official thank you letter came on heavy stationery. She framed it and hung it in the study. But Margaret knew lamps and a glass case were not enough. She needed a barrier no one could break.
Elizabeth, I want to amend my will. The library can't be sold or given away again. Not ever.
We could create a trust, but that's expensive. What kind of protection are you thinking?
A heritage clause. The collection goes only to a grandchild who passes a literature exam I design.
An exam? That's unusual, but legally sound. You'd need to define it clearly.
Elizabeth drafted the clause, her pen moving steadily, as Margaret explained the conditions.
Charles believed books should be earned. He'd want whoever inherits them to prove they understand.
Take this draft home. Once signed and witnessed, it becomes part of your will.
I'll start writing the exam tonight. They'll learn what these books truly mean.
She returned to the study, the draft in her hands. All that remained was to write the test. That night, Margaret sat at the desk, a fresh legal pad in front of her. For hours, she wrote.
Question 1. Why is the river in Huckleberry Finn a character, not just a setting? It must start with the books that built Charles's soul.
She listed 10 questions, each tied to a specific edition in the collection. The answers were hidden in their pages.
Passing this exam won't be easy. A grandchild who truly loved Charles would understand why it matters.
Over the next few days, she compiled a study guide, a list of the key books, with notes on their themes and history. Gregory stopped by with coffee and read over her shoulder. Questions like these can't be Googled. They require a reader's heart. Charles would have loved this. She placed the finished exam and study guide into a manila envelope and sealed it.
Now it's sealed until the will is signed. No one can claim ignorance of what's required.
The library's future now depended on a test no one had ever taken, and Margaret was at peace with that. 2 days later, Margaret arrived at Elizabeth's office with the sealed envelope. The waiting was over.
Margaret, I have the final will ready. Once you and the witnesses sign, it becomes effective immediately.
I've never been more certain of anything. The library deserves a guardian, not an heir who sees dollar signs.
She took the pen and signed her name, Margaret Reeves Bennet. The ink dried into permanence. Elizabeth's paralegal and a law clerk stepped forward as witnesses. They added their signatures without a word.
It's done. The heritage clause is now part of your estate. No one can touch those books without passing that exam.
Back home, Margaret walked to the study and opened the small wall safe behind the framed thank you letter. Inside, she placed the signed will next to the sealed exam envelope and Charles's old pocket watch.
There. Now the library is sealed, just as Charles would have wanted. Only a worthy reader will ever open these shelves again.
She touched the safe door one last time. The weight of the day settled into a quiet peace. A week later, Margaret sent out invitations. 4 people gathered in her sunlit living room: Gregory, Elizabeth, the university librarian, and a neighbor.
I promised you all a look at the library. Please, come in.
She opened the study door and let them enter. The brass lamps glowed, and the glass case shone. It's even more beautiful than when Charles had it. He would be so proud. Margaret.
To think these were nearly lost in a Goodwill. You fought a war for them and won.
They're safe now, and they'll stay that way. That's all that matters.
She poured glasses of sherry, Charles's favorite, and handed them around.
To Charles, who taught us that a good book is more precious than gold.
They drank, and for a moment, the room felt full of his presence.
I won't tell them about the exam just yet. Tonight is for remembering.
After the toast, Margaret walked to the glass case and lifted out the signed Hemingway. She held it like a sacred object.
This was Charles's favorite passage. He read it aloud on our honeymoon.
She opened to a worn page and began to read, her voice steady at first.
If we win here, we will win everywhere. The world is a fine place and worth the fighting for, and I hate very much to leave it.
Her voice caught on, leave it. She paused. The room held its breath. He always said that line was why he collected books, because some sentences make death worth it. Elizabeth wiped her eye. The librarian bowed her head.
He's still here, in these pages. I feel him every time I open one.
The group stood in a circle of silence, the brass lamps casting long shadows over the spines. She closed the book and touched its cover. The evening had given Charles a voice again. The guests departed. Margaret closed the front door and let the house fall quiet. The study waited, a single lamp still burning. She walked back and lowered herself into Charles's old leather armchair. The cushion still held a memory of his shape. Her eyes found the framed photograph on the desk. Charles, mid-laugh, a first edition open in his hands.
He would have loved tonight. Books, friends, remembering. It was his kind of evening. Stephen should have been here. He belongs here. But not with her. Not yet. Maybe one day.
A tear traced her cheek. She let it fall without a sound. She drew a breath, and the weight of the long fight finally began to settle.
I'll call Elizabeth tomorrow. Make sure the will is filed. Then we wait.
She closed her eyes. A faint smile touched her lips. In the quiet room, the books stood sentinel, their spines a testament to everything that could not be thrown away. Morning light streamed through the window, catching the gold lettering on 1,000 spines. A new day had begun. Margaret entered the study, carrying the sealed exam envelope she had retrieved from the safe. Her steps were light. She placed it on the desk, right next to the framed photograph of Charles. The two objects belonged together. With a finger, she straightened the photo, aligning it with the envelope. A silent promise.
There. The library is ready for whoever earns it.
She let her gaze travel across the room. Every shelf held a rescued volume, a memory, a piece of Charles. The fight was over. The collection would never again be treated as trash.
I did what I had to, Charles. For you, for the books, for whoever will love them next.
A real smile, unforced, settled on her face. The kind that comes after a long trial ends. Beyond the window, autumn leaves whispered in the breeze. But inside, the study was silent, safe, and eternal. A soft ring broke the silence. The telephone on the desk, unused for months, was calling.
Hello.
Mom, it's Stephen. I just wanted to hear your voice.
I am here, Stephen. I am not going anywhere.
I know what she did was wrong. I can't fix it, but I want to try. Can we maybe talk sometime?
One day. Not yet. But the door isn't closed. You know where the study is.
Thank you. I'll prove myself. I will.
The line went quiet. Margaret set the receiver down and looked at the envelope still on the desk.
Maybe the exam will matter to someone. Maybe to Stephen's child, if he ever has one.
She turned to the shelves, letting her fingers trace the leather spines. The library was safe. The future was a question she could finally let rest. Later that week, Gregory came to the door with a thick envelope and news. The Boston Auction House is publishing a catalog of significant private collections. They want Charles Reeves's library featured.
Because of that Hemingway signature, I suppose. You spotted it for $4, and now the world will know.
It's what Charles would have wanted. His love for books, preserved and honored.
And no one can take them again. The exam clause ensures that the next guardian will be a true reader.
She opened the display case and placed the catalog draft beside the Hemingway, a new chapter for an old story.
This collection went from a Goodwill box to a Boston catalog. That's a story I'll make sure they include.
Gregory left as the sun slanted low. Margaret stood alone in the golden light, the catalog's glossy proof in her hands.
From $4 to $300,000, and now a place in history. All because one man looked at a flyleaf.
The signature that saved a library. Margaret touched the glass and whispered her thanks to the quiet room. The catalog arrived. Margaret carefully opened the parcel, and there was the glossy cover, Private Libraries of New England. She turned to page 64, and there, beside a full-page photograph, was her library, described as the Reeves Collection, rediscovered at Goodwill.
Charles's name in print. Every book accounted for. This vindicates everything.
Gregory came by and saw the open page. He traced the photo with his finger. That Hemingway's signature saved them. Without it, this collection would be scattered across a dozen bargain bins.
And without you, it would have stayed there. You gave me back more than books, Gregory.
She framed the catalog page and hung it beside the thank you letter. The study walls now told a story too.
A story of what we lost, what we fought for, and what we made sure would never be lost again.
The university librarian called to say they'd received the duplicates with gratitude. They planned a small exhibit in Charles's name.
We did it, Charles. The library is safe, forever.
Margaret stood for a long moment, her hand resting on the glass case. The house was quiet, the evening settling in. She crossed to the window and looked out at the autumn yard, the leaves fallen where they may.
This house will change hands one day, but the library will stay. The exam will wait.
She turned from the window and walked to Charles's old armchair. She lowered herself into it with a sigh. On the desk, the sealed exam envelope and the photograph stood side by side, waiting for a day that might never come.
A good story is never finished, Charles. It just finds a new reader.
The lamp on her side table cast a golden circle over the books. The room held its breath. Outside, the autumn wind stirred the leaves, but inside, the library was still. Margaret closed her eyes. The weight of the long battle finally lifted, leaving only the quiet certainty of a love preserved. And so the library remained, a safe bet against forgetting, a testament to one signature that had rescued a legacy from a bargain bin. Margaret opened her eyes. The study was exactly as she had left it, full, warm, and silent, save for the gentle hum of the old house settling. She rose from the armchair, her hand trailing across the leather that held the shape of Charles's shoulders. A last touch. At the desk, she touched the sealed manila envelope, the one that held the exam, her legacy waiting in the dark. She straightened the photograph so that Charles's gaze met hers, then looked out at the room she had fought to save. Every book was a piece of him, the Hemingway with its signature, the Steinbeck with its inscription, the Millay with its love note. She crossed to the lamp. Her hand paused on the brass switch as she took one last look around the quiet sanctuary. She turned it off. Darkness claimed the corners, but the study did not feel empty. It felt watchful. The envelope and the photograph remained on the desk, a sliver of moonlight painting them silver on the wooden surface. In the silence, Margaret's voice came, barely a whisper, but the room listened.
Good night, Charles.